If you're a CTO or you work in a company where your CTO owns and runs Jira, it's probably a bad idea. Let me explain why. Now, I like to draw the analogy of an airplane pilot. You might have an airplane pilot who is phenomenal at flying planes, right? They could land, they could take off. They're really great at what they do. They have no problems, never had any issues being an airplane pilot. And what they do there is obviously very, very important work. But at the same time, an airplane pilot can't just walk over to air traffic control and start doing the job of an air traffic control individual. Even though they're an airplane pilot who does that for a living and they're phenomenal at it, it's just not their job. And there's three big reasons of why these jobs are so different. And number one is just that the airplane pilot really doesn't have time to do the job of an air traffic control individual. In the same way, a CTO who's doing really, really good things, who's flying planes, who's delivering great products, worried about security, concerned about their team, growing their team, managing, probably doesn't have the time to just go in and start administering Jira on top of that. Now, it's really just not their job, and they probably don't have the time for it, but big reason number two is that they're likely just too technical for Jira. And I say that in a good way, right? There's places where too technical or being technical is really, really good, but there's also moments and certain roles where being technical makes things almost a little bit unintuitive, right? I'll give a very clear and simple example of this. A lot of times in Jira, we might want or require an assignee on a ticket or work item for reporting reasons, right? We might want someone to know when someone's working on something, when it's been completed, who it's been completed by, and to do that, we need an assignee on the ticket. Now, the default response and what I've seen most technical individuals, teams, and roles like CTOs do is they just go in and add the field as required. So when you go to create a ticket, or when you go to transition it from in progress to done, or from to do to in progress, you're gonna have a field that pops up that says, hey, assignee required, click here, click the assignee, click save, and then move on. So immediately we've just added 4 or 5 different clicks to just creating or transitioning to a new status, a work item. Now, this will yield us the result that we want. This will get us the result that we're looking for. And in some cases, this is actually a good solution. But in this case, what I would do and what has worked a lot better for the companies and clients that I've worked with is just set up an automation. And that automation will look at whoever's making the transition, let's say from to do to in progress, and assign the work item to that individual. Now it does use an automation, but instead of your individual going in there, clicking the dropdown, clicking the assignee, being worried about the assignee being there, and then making sure that when they transition a ticket, it's not blank, otherwise they get an error. It just happens in the background. And it's a creative solution that allows our teams to enjoy and use Jira better and use it more. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard, a lot of the Jira hate. It's too much, leans too much into micromanagers, too bureaucratic, too slow, too clunky. And a lot of times, pretty much all of the time, right? That's not because of the product itself. The product itself is pretty decent. I have some, gripes with Jira, and there's things I don't love, but the UI is good and it's fairly quick, easy to use, pretty intuitive for the most part, right? It takes a little bit to get used to, but for the most part, pretty intuitive as well. But when we add in all of these restrictions, right, maybe it's just assignee in this case, but what if you need 10 fields that you're reporting on? What if you need 20? What if you need 30 in some cases? If you're adding in all of those restrictions on issue creation or work item creation, or when you transition something from in progress to do, you're adding in friction. And that friction makes people hate Jira. And that's what we want to avoid. And oftentimes the technical individuals who, again, probably don't have time to worry about this, they just make the field required and they move on. Rather than looking for a creative solution, one that will affect our teams and users better and make them enjoy the platform and product more. Real quick, I've implemented Jira for over 200 companies. By far, the number one reason teams reach out to us is because they built what they thought was a great solution, only to realize that nobody actually ended up using it. And if that sounds familiar, that's exactly what we help you fix. And if you want help implementing Jira in a way that your team will actually use, hit the first link in the description below. Now, the third thing that this causes, and the third reason that these jobs are so different, the CTO between like a Jira admin or someone who owns Jira is kind of the bloat that all of this creates. So let's say that you do make the assignee field required. Well, let's say tomorrow, Bob from marketing says, hey, we need a new custom field called campaign. And campaign needs these couple of options, and then we'll need it added to this project. You get this created, you get it set up, you get everything sent over to Bob, and Bob's like, great, you're awesome, you're doing such a great job, big round of applause, and you're super happy, Bob's happy, but then a year later, Bob is no longer with the company, the marketing campaign that was being used is no longer running, and you don't know what the field is being used for, if the field is being used at all, and then which spaces or project it's still relevant on. So something that sounded useful initially, who knows if it's been used or not, right? Might have never been used at all, is something that you created as a CTO or someone in a similar role, and then that just becomes bloat over time. And let's imagine you add 50, 100, 1,000 people to your company over the past year or couple of years, and all of them are requesting different Jira spaces and projects. They're requesting different fields, different workflows, and there's a bunch of turnover that happens. And eventually you look back and you're like, whoa, we have hundreds of Jira spaces that half the people don't ever use and don't know what they are. We have thousands of custom fields. We have hundreds or thousands of workflows and tens of thousands of statuses with hundreds of different priority levels. And we don't know if they're being used or not. And this is super, super common, very common with clients that I work with. And a lot of times what I come in and what my team comes in to actually remediate when we get hired, we're jumping in and we're looking at things that just spun out of control because it wasn't really the CTO's job to manage Jira, and their job was just to essentially get the job, the little task done when it was asked of them. And it creates all of this bloat where if you have to check in and say, hey, new head of marketing, Dan, is this campaign field still being used? Dan has to go and check with his team. The team gets back to him in a couple of days, and they say, hey, I don't know, actually, it might be used, it might not be. We could probably remove it, but we might need that data sometime in the future. And then you end up with an answer that's really not an answer, right? We end up with a bloated Jira environment. We end up with a system and a tool that people don't want to use. They hate Jira, right? They hate jumping in there. They hate tracking their work. And we created an environment that our team and company doesn't enjoy using. And that's really what happens when someone who's flying the plane goes over to air traffic control and they don't necessarily need to or want to do that job, but they're forced to, and they're thrown in there, and they just have to pull things together and do what they can while still flying the plane at the same time. And it's not their job. It's just not something that they were trained to do, not something that they want to do. And oftentimes what the job of a really, really good Jira admin or an air traffic control individual is to monitor everything that's happening, monitor all the planes that are flying, planes that are landing, taking off, making sure there's nothing crashing in the air, right? And what a really good Jira admin would do when Bob comes and says, hey, we need this new field for campaign and we need these values. The Jira admin should then go look, and maybe there's another field called campaigns, plural, with the same exact values that Bob was looking for. Maybe Bob's solution would have been better off to put the campaign in a description. Maybe it would have been better off as a label. Maybe it would have been better off as a checkbox or in the summary or as a comment. There's a million different little solutions that can probably achieve what Bob is looking for without actually creating a custom field, because that might be the worst option that Bob automatically prescribed as the solution. The job of a good Jira admin is to take what the request of the end user is and translate it into the best solution possible. That's what allows a Jira environment to be adopted, to be enjoyed, to actually be used by a team and have accurate reporting, good data, good information in it for the whole company to use. So the three big things, again, why the job of a CTO or someone who's flying the plane is very different from a Jira admin or air traffic control individual is that, number one, it's just not their job and they probably don't have the time for it. And number two is that they're probably just too technical for what Jira is requiring and what that kind of entails as a whole. And number three, that causes a lot of Jira bloat in the long term, which probably costs more to then fix and remediate than to just hire someone or bring someone in part-time or hire an agency to just come and help manage Jira over time in a way that's going to allow that company to scale. So those are the 3 big reasons. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to work with us or if you're interested in working with myself and my team, there's a quick form at the bottom of this video. Go ahead and check that out.